Welcome to America's Heroes Group.
Thank you for joining us today on America's Heroes Group Roundtable. We are globally connected. Military Families Matters with partner family caregiver Keisha L. Jackson. Today is Saturday, November 5th, 2022. November is Military Family Appreciation and Alzheimer's Disease Awareness Month. Our host is Kelley. I'm the co-host today, Debra Denhart. Our executive producer is Glenda Smith. And our digital media producer is Ivan Ortega, Scouts Honor Productions. Today we're joined by our partner Keisha L. Jackson, who's a U.S. Air Force veteran and family caregiver. And her panelist is Daphne Wright. She's a certified financial planner and founder of Flourish Financial Pathways. Thank you, Keisha and Daphne, for being our guest today.
Yes. Hi, Debra. Thank you.
How are you all doing?
Doing well. Thank you.
Great.
I'm doing well as well.
Perfect.
Daphne, before Daphne gets started, Debra, I just wanted to say to you and all of my fellow veterans that are present, active duty, or have retired or have gotten out, I salute you for this upcoming Veterans Day. And as you mentioned that, November is National Family Caregivers Appreciation Month. So this is definitely my heart, my topic, my passion, being able to provide and share information for family caregivers. So today's topic, talking about debunking or the myths about long-term care, I feel that this is really important, whether you're active duty, whether you're caring for someone active duty, or whether you're retired, a veteran, or whether you're caring for a retired veteran or someone that has gotten out of the military.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. I'm also a U.S. Air Force veteran. I forgot to mention that. So, Keisha, we have something in common.
Yes.
So, yes, what a great topic, dispelling myths about long-term insurance. So let's start off with some of those myths. What are some misconceptions about what Medicaid will cover when it comes to this?
Well, Medicaid is actually for persons who are in lower income. So it's a lot of people say, okay, Medicaid will cover that, but first you have to qualify. So just about each state is going to have different Medicare rules, and that will be based on income limits, size of the family. And so first you have to qualify for Medicaid. So a lot of people will be on Medicare, and we can talk about that too, but Medicaid will be for very low income. And then oftentimes when you find out how much you may need to put out, and I'm going to kind of more think of, you'll have two situations. You'll have people who can start off affording expenses, or you can have people who already are under those kind of the low-income guidelines for their state. So if you qualify for Medicaid, you're not going to have a problem. But here's where it comes in, where people may be close to that, or they find out that they're exhausting a lot of their assets. There are spin-down rules in order for you to qualify.
Oh, okay. So what are some of those rules?
So basically, spin down is it's the concept that just comes into play so that a person has to come under those certain income levels and asset levels, or they'll be disqualified. So it's the way to legally bring down your income and your assets in line with the eligibility requirements. So I've dealt with some people who spend on this is not something people generally want to try to do, but oftentimes it is needed because otherwise you're looking that you really will just continue to exhaust your assets. But what each state is going to set, they're going to have something called countable assets. You also may hear the term non-exempt assets. So these are just liquid assets. So these are going to be like your bank account, stocks and bonds. And generally the limit for that can be pretty low. So like in my area, it's like $2,500. So you'll have to spend down your assets. And then there's some things that are exempt. So they say you can keep this. You may be able to keep your house. Generally, if it's not of a certain value. And here's the other thing, that it kind of depends on particular states if you're married or not married. So if you have to go into a nursing home and you're single, that house may not be exempt. But if you have a spouse that has to stay in the house, then it be exempt, so the spouse can stay there if it's not if the value of the house is not above the limits as well.
So in other words, it's type of getting rid of your assets, so you have less to claim.
Yeah,
Is that what you're saying?
Getting rid of your assets, and there's some strict guidelines where they're going to make sure, they're going to try to make sure, because some people will try to do this as a strategy. They say, let's get rid of our assets. So you really have to be careful. There's something called the look back period. That's usually for most states 60 months or 5 years. And so, before Medicaid does it, they're going to try to make sure that you didn't have assets that you gave away. Like you may give away your money to your cousins and friends and things like that, or a car, so that you can qualify. So if you do that, right, you literally, and they find out, which they're going to really try to check, right, then it will disqualify you for additional months for the period of time that you've done that, and you usually will push out more. You'll probably be in worse shape.
Right. So just
by doing that.
Just don't do it if you can.
Yes. Correct.
You will get caught. You will get caught.
Correct.
So what are some things that people really need to know before considering the purchase of long-term insurance?
So long-term care insurance is, first of all, I think that just kind of statistically, according to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, someone turning 65 today will have a 70% chance of requiring some long-term care service support during some time in their life. And in the case of women, the typical long-term care need will last a little bit over 3.5 years compared to men, which is just a little bit over 2 years. So while approximately 1/3 of today's 65-year-olds may not ever need long-term care, 20% of those who do will require it for more than 5 years. So that's one of the reasons why you want to think about getting long-term care insurance. And so I think two things. One thing you want to understand is what long-term care insurance covers and what it doesn't. So it's not for medical care. It is actually to cover some of the activities of daily living. So more like custodial for custodial things. So some of the triggers are let me just say this, because I think a lot of times people don't know. Long-term care policies are standard across the board, right? So all long-term care policies go by the same. They have a lot of provisions, but the foundation of it is that they go into effect when a person cannot perform 2 of the 6 activities of daily living. You'll hear this term called ADLs, activities of daily living, and those are called bathing. Those will be bathing, eating, dressing by yourself, transferring, and transferring is the ability to walk and get out of bed or a chair, toileting, or continence, okay? And then above the 6 ADLs is, cognitive impairment like Alzheimer's or dementia. So that's what it does cover, but it's not covering medical care. And remember, it has to be 2 of the 6. But I still advocate that people really want, when you look at the statistics, it will be something that you really want to consider. And I'll just say as a certified financial planner, I kind of look at it in terms of 2 things for your care, but also you do it as a part of kind of retirement planning. So you can say, okay, well, at least that'll mitigate me using up hundreds of thousands of dollars or tens of thousands as opposed to paying a premium. But some of the things you really want to understand that what it does and does not cover, and you also want to consider your assets. So there are people, if Medicaid, may not. I mean, I'm sorry, long-term care. If you have if you're wealthy, you may not need it, and if you're close to the poverty, not poverty, but low income, you may not want to get it either. So it's kind of that middle of the road person, because if you're very low income, you could possibly qualify for Medicaid. And if you're very, have a good amount of wealth, you may be able to self kind of insure. I think the thing I would just think about with long-term care is you want to think about it for yourself. And I also think that it's good to think about it for, parent, if your parents, or that, you have parents who, even if they're not, in a bad place now, because it would be hard to get it if you're not healthy. If you know that if something happens, you'd probably be responsible for your parents, or you would probably be coming out of pocket, you may want to try to get that before they're too old and it would be affordable to you.
Yeah, did you say that long-term care insurance, is that a federal, is that, where do the guidelines for that, for the standards of that come from?
So that it is the National Insurance, NAIC, I think, sets those standards for it. But you'll be getting long-term care insurance from private care, the insurance companies.
Okay, so is every state different? Would every state have different types of insurance available for that?
So it's really not a state program like a Medicare or Medicaid. So it's not a state program, but yeah.
Okay.
There may be different rules for the insurance, but all in all, those are not state programs.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, can you respond to the myth that most elderly people receive long-term care in nursing homes?
Well, a lot of people are not. I mean, most people are not going into nursing homes. A lot of people will be having. First of all, most elderly people aren't even going to nursing homes. Many will never need to be in a nursing home. But then let's just talk about those who have some kind of impairment. Many people are staying home. They have home health care. People coming in to assist them. And I'll just say these long-term care policies, if you're looking for that, that's one of the provisions you may want to have, and that's going to be pretty prevalent, that you can have home health care. You may have family members helping you. Other things that people have is like adult daycares, things like that, some community programs, but more and more people are staying home, and that's going to definitely cut down on costs. And if you have these kinds of these coverages, or you have people to help, a lot of people are just have family caretakers. The affordability can really be high for a person for a nursing home.
Right. Oh, absolutely. I mean, you think about 24-hour, coverage in a nursing home and some cost to that. What is the average cost for someone to, say, for example, a nursing home? Are there any numbers out there on
Yeah, actually a good place to go on there is by state, and you can go on the Genworth cost of care, because that's really going to vary. It's really going to vary from state to state. But if someone's going to be and having long-term care needs, you're going to get into the hundreds of dollars, even for daily care. Yes, and I can kind of bring that up, and I think that may be a good time to just think about Medicare. What does Medicare cover?
Oh, true. Yes. What does Medicare cover?
So, that's kind of also a myth that Medicare will pay for long-term care expenses. So, Medicare, there's Part A and Part B, and there's the Part A for the hospitalization and Part B for medical. So, you're thinking a lot about your medical, but when you talk about long-term care, an extended stay, there are limits. So before Medicare starts to cover the cost of any hospital stay, the person is going to have to meet the deductible. So I think right now it's like $1,556, right? And then on the benefit period, we're talking about a hospitalization, right? So this is just talking, so when we're thinking of long-term care, I'm just trying to get the context of just being in a hospital. We're just not talking about someone who needs extended custodial care. But even with that, the benefit period starts the first day of the hospitalization and ends 60 consecutive days after the person's discharged from the hospital or the nursing. But for the first 60 days, there is no, you're not paying any coinsurance, right? But from days 61 to 90, you are paying $389 daily.
Wow.
Okay, it's going to be $400 in 2023. So for those days, then after the 90 days, you're paying $778 daily.
That adds up.
That adds up pretty quickly, right? It's going to be $800 in 2023. And then after 91 days in the hospital, then the insured pays all the costs. So you can really see, I think this is one of the biggest myths, that Medicare is going to pay for, these long-term stays. It does not.
Wow. So is there only private insurance, to cover these costs? I know some organizations, help with the cost, but as far as in general, do most people who don't have the categories you mentioned, if they're wealthy, if they're, in the poverty range, is there any, type of additions, organizations out there to help, again, federally or statewide to help cover some of these costs that?
Well, I'm not really familiar except with the, the Medicaid programs to cover that. So that's why. Now, I can, you asked one thing about the states. Now, some of the states have been enacted, well, they're not covering this, but let me not go there because I'm going to get a little bit too in the weeds, but not really. You're just going to have to try to, go to your states and see what kinds of programs you can get, but there's nothing that is, federally funded because these are the things. But what a person can do, if they, for Medicare, you can get a companion plan with, you can either you can get a Medicare Advantage. That's one of the things on the Medicare menu. Now that will cover some of the costs that Medicare would not cover, some of the hospital stays. Also, there's Medigap insurance. That will cover some of the costs that beyond what Medicare will pay. And then many other people will have from their, maybe from their jobs, and that's becoming less prevalent, that they may still have coverage from, medical coverage from their jobs. But here's the other thing. That's usually medical coverage, right? Because I talked about hospitalizations. I'm not really talking about that long-term care when a person is needing, ongoing custodial care beyond like skilled nursing care, and even for Medicaid.
I wanted to add into that, Daphne, the Office of Personnel Management. I did want to bring that in. They have the federal long-term care insurance program. And so that may be another alternative for people, whether it's military or what federal jobs, to be able to look into the different programs that they have as well. Again, that's the Office of Personnel Management. Great. They have the federal long-term care insurance program.
I'm going to jump in here really quick. We have about a minute left. We're going to close out, but thank you so much, both of you, for being guests today. Keisha Jackson and Daphne Wright. Keisha, our partner and family caregiver, and Daphne, your panelist. I really appreciate you being on the program today. So stay tuned with America. Thank you. Stay tuned with America's Heroes Group. We'll be right back.